Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Marlene Mengoni. I'm the Diversity Inclusion Membership Chair of the European Society of Biomechanics. And so today I'm just sharing this webinar on diversity in biomechanics, but in particular with a view within the society. Before I forget, and while I'm starting, I'd like to thank Alex and Chiara for helping with the organization, because otherwise I would still be preparing my slide and messing even more with the online system that I've already done before. So why is this webinar? This webinar is very much to kickstart a mentoring program that we launched a couple of months ago in the society. And this mentoring program came up from the discussion we had in Porto last year at the Women in Biomechanics Apero, where we asked all members, well, Reilly and Alex asked all members of the audience what type of actions we could take as a society, and in the top two categories came developing a mentoring program for young researchers. Which we did, and therefore we wanted to try and launch that mentoring program formally with this webinar. And so this mentoring program is very much trying to build structured partnership between a mentee and mentors, where a mentor is more experienced and provide kind of a role model in sharing advice on professional development, or on the topic of choice with a less experienced mentee. It's not coaching, it's not counseling, it's not championing the mentee. It's very much a discussion partnership for guidance and advice. So far we've launched 13 partnership across the world, most of them within Europe, but well distributed within Europe. But we also have mentors in Uruguay and in Malaysia, so quite a nice spreading. And what we suggest within the program is that meetings are held for at least 6 months, because that's the time that takes to build a trust relationship, I think, and then spaced out at regular intervals, depending on an agreement between mentor and mentees so that this meetings of 40 minutes or so. And we've developed guidelines for the mentors in particular to try and help build that successful relationship. That's an overview of the idea of the program. And so what we're doing today is very much just a panel discussion, and I invited 3 speakers. So we've got Reilly, which I've invited mostly because she was first woman president of the society, and hopefully she'll talk to us a bit about her view of diversity within the society, and now she's come up to become president at some point. And then Pinaki and Melika, I've asked them to talk to us about their lived experience of diversity within the field of biomechanics in Europe. And you can see directly that I don't consider diversity as being a woman thing. Diversity is any type of minority, I think, and the experience of any type of minority. So we're using the GoToWebinar platform. Some of you might be familiar with it, some of you might not be familiar with it. You will have already discovered that you're all muted and your camera is off. That's going to stay for the duration of the webinar. And you can interact with us through the chat, so you'll find the chat at the bottom of the panel. You can either use the chat to everyone or to specific attendees. Okay. We'll take Q&A at the end of the 3 talks. Okay, so please use the chat and ask your questions as you think of it. But I'll come to those questions once we've heard from our 3 speakers. So without further ado, I'll leave the floor to Gwen.
Hi, thank you very much. So yes, so the historical perspective on diversity, I had to think after Marlene asked me that what I could talk about. And I guess most of my experience comes from looking at gender diversity. So apologies that I won't talk much about other aspects, but I think it's quite a good sort of example of how progress can be made, but it's quite slow. So if I think about when I was very young in the society, I was a student. I don't know if a lot of other people have had this experience, but I didn't even kind of expect better diversity, if you like. I'd already got into scientific conferences where there was a lot of white men, and I kind of thought that was normal and that's what you expect. And there was actually my mentor at the time, my supervisor at the time, who's a white man, who approached someone at the council while I was there and said, what are you going to do about this problem of women? She said, what do you mean the problem of women? He goes, well, look around you, where are all the women? And that's the first time I noticed. I didn't even notice that there weren't many women around. It just gets normalized. So I think that's the first thing, is to acknowledge the problem. And that's what I think we've all doing a lot better now. So he sort of alerted me to the problem, made me think about it more. The person he approached at the council, who was female, said, I'm already struggling with the problem of not enough young people and students, so I'm dealing with that first. So I think that's an issue of where, even though we all acknowledge diversity is important, there can be other priorities that are equally important and or overlap. In that case, of course, bringing in more young people to the society helps diversity in all different ways. It was quite interesting how I came to the idea of joining the council, because the council themselves, so the other important thing is what we call advocates, or critical friends, or things like that. They're called people who themselves are kind of in the majority, but realise this is a problem and don't want to be in the majority. They want to encourage diversity, but they're not always quite sure how. So the council did start having a programme of trying to encourage more women to apply. And at the time, the then president actually said to me, oh, Gwen, I can see you being the first female president we have, which obviously was a massive compliment. I still wasn't even on the council at the time. What I didn't know, is later, I found out many, many years later, was that that guy had actually competed with a woman to be president and stopped the other person being the first woman president. So actually it was guilt talking. So it turned out his guilty conscience was then approaching another person, because like, okay, I didn't let this one be president, but maybe, you know, I'll get this younger woman to come in and she might eventually become president. So that was a bit cheeky. If I'd have known that, I might not have seen it as such a compliment as I did. But that's important encouragement. People need encouragement. They need to be told it's possible. They, you know, there's the importance of role models. So I thought, yeah, why not? I should do. So then it came to trying to get onto the council. And as I say, the council was trying to encourage more this is really only about gender diversity at this point. And what they did was ask lots of good women in the society to apply. So plenty of us applied all at one time, and then none of us got in. And someone senior in the council at the time said that's because we split the women's vote, the singular women's vote. So there are 10 people on the council, but apparently there was only one women's vote. And I think there were 2 positions. So he said, obviously there's 2 positions available. You're not going to vote for 2 women. You're going to vote 1 man, 1 woman. So you shouldn't have had so many of you apply at once. So that was quite offensive and really made me realise again the complications of trying to encourage people to apply. And also this kind of misunderstanding, because if there were actually, it wasn't diverse to vote for 1 woman, 1 man, right? Because the council was already completely non-diverse, and I think it had 9 men on it. So it's looking at the big picture, not just at the little thing you're addressing on that day. Anyway, so I tried again. They started being a bit more strategic who they asked to apply. And eventually, so I've got a picture actually of the council in those days. So screen of monitor 2. Can you see some photographs some photographs come up. Someone says Edinburgh, so okay, sorry about my word messing up. So yeah, so this is when I was about that's 2 years into my council term, and I think I was the only woman at that point, but there might have been someone who couldn't come. Usually there was 2 women on the council around this time. And then this is when I became president, Boston 2014, and Mary Angeles, who became the next president, joined at that time. Just trying to get that a bit bigger, but it's not working. So then I asked Reilly, what's happening now? Do we now have more like 50-50 representation? So she sent me this picture from last year, I think it was, and not really, there's still 2, 3, I think the maximum we've had is 4. So that's just to show that progress is slow, even when the problem's acknowledged, even when it's addressed, even when you have role models, all these things that everyone says, if we do all these things, we'll have more diversity. There's still further blockers, which might well be to do with either what they call the pipeline. Are there enough people in the pipeline? And is it a general problem of engineering, that there are not enough women in engineering? Or is it to do with lots of good women at mid-career level not feeling like they can put themselves forward? So yeah, so that's the sort of historical perspective. And that's before we even look at what I think I mean, obviously it's a European society, but there's much more racial diversity in the rest of Europe than there is in our society, let alone if we look globally. And then in terms of disability access, I would say we're pretty poor. We don't read, or hadn't been, while I was still on the council, we hadn't been strongly considering disability access, and I hope that's something we're thinking about a lot more now. And again, these things aren't that easy to implement. Even thinking about, for example, one of the issues I thought about was childcare. Should we have childcare at conferences? It's extremely complicated to have the kind of childcare that would benefit everybody, that fits what their needs are, with all the different school systems we have around Europe and all the different timings and different ages of children. So when you have an idea related to diversity, it's really not that easy to implement and not that easy to satisfy all the needs. But that's the whole point of diversity, isn't it? Everyone has different needs because we're diverse. So implementing something that really makes a difference is tough. So I don't know if that wasn't very encouraging, but progress is being made, but very slow. I think I'll stop at that point.
Great, thanks a lot, Gwen. I think it's a good summary and a good overview of where we're still struggling and where we're trying to progress. Pinaki, you want to get...
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Everything, can you hear me now, Marlene?
All good.
Brilliant. Hello, so I'm Pinaki Bhattacharya, and thank you, Marlene, for introducing me earlier. I am a senior lecturer in the Insigne Institute and the Mechanical Engineering Department at the University of Sheffield, which is in the UK. So just a bit of research background. I'm a computational biomechanics person, and I do, try to build better tools to diagnose patients and predict long-term disease outcomes in the musculoskeletal disease area mainly. So I've been in the UK since 2015, but as Marlene said, this talk is not about research; it's about lived experiences in Europe. So I have a bit of a slide about my life going back a few years. So I'm from India. And my entry into biomechanics was probably a little was not direct. So my undergraduate degree was in naval architecture, and then I worked for a few years as a software engineer. Then I was working in very traditional engineering field of applied mathematics of fluid mechanics. Then I went to the US to do my PhD, where I first got a taste of biomechanics. This was in soft tissue biomechanics and involved some flow structure interaction computational problems. In the meanwhile, I got married to someone who also wanted to become academic. So it's a two-body academia problem that we have, and as yet I would say partially resolved. Then since 2012, I moved to Belgium, KU Leuven, where since 2013 I have been an ESB member. So, and in Belgium, I was a postdoc where I also worked on bone and bone matrix related problems. And after that, I moved to the UK. So I have a bit of international experience as an experienced international researcher and other things that come with it. So very happy to be here, and thank you very much, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Pinaki. Melika.
Good. Well, do you hear me?
Yep.
That's perfect. Very good. So first of all, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for the invitation. I'm so interested to be here with you to discuss about diversity in biomechanics. So I think maybe in the beginning, it's good to talk about myself a little bit for those probably who do not know me. So my name is Melika Mohammadkhah. I'm originally from Iran, and since 2013, I migrated abroad. So I started my PhD at Trinity College Dublin. And so since 2014, I am the ESB member, and I'm happy about this too. So my work when I was doing my PhD was focused on the muscle biomechanics, to know about the structure and functions of the muscle. And then in 2017, I started my work as a postdoc at the Technical University of Berlin. And then I totally shifted my research from muscle biomechanics to bone biomechanics and scaffold design and bone healing. So still I'm working at TU Berlin, but I'm hopefully going to the next level of my profession soon. So let's see what happens in the future. So talking about diversity in biomechanics, so I have seen a couple of things over years. I would say since 2013 that I am professionally working in this field, is that, well, I remember that my first international conference was in 2012 in Berlin, CMBBE, and it was really interesting. It was a very different experience to me compared to the national conferences I had attended beforehand. And then now when I'm comparing the conference that I was last week in Dresden to the one that I was in 2012, so I could clearly see the huge number of women attending in all different levels. So as the invited speakers, the normal speakers, the chair of the sessions, and it's really, I think, promising. But what I would like to say is that I think, to me, diversity has two sides: the quantitative representation of different society, gender difference, people from minority groups, and so on. And also we have the aspect of the qualitative representation of these groups. I think over time, the quantitative part is quite acceptable. I think, as Gwendolen said, so the progress is slow, but it's moving on and it's good. And for example, I can see that we have more women as the chair of the sessions in the conferences, which is very good, because I think that they can be a role model, and the young ladies could picture themselves if they want to stay in academia in the future. Which is good. I think that this aspect has been dealt with quite well. But the other thing is the quantitative representation of the diversity. To me, it's not really well established yet, because I think diversity is bringing people from different lived experiences and opinions together. So it means that we first need to respect diversity, respect different opinions, and then we try to work well together for a bigger goal. So, but I can see that sometimes in universities, in different organizations, there have been so much investment on diversity, inclusion, equality, equity, and so on. But then when they have all of these things together, then they ask for sameness. And to me, it's quite ironic, I would say. So I think that it would be nice if we say that, well, we're going to be a better society if we learn from people from different culture, different experiences. And I think that part, or that aspect of diversity, needs to be worked better. So that's what I think personally. Just due to my 10 years of professional experience. So probably there are people with more experience here, so they can comment on this. But what I can say, just the final words from my side, is that I'm so happy that I see that, especially the gender diversity. So there are more women in engineering, I would say, and they want to be more active in the society. That's really good. And I'm also thankful of my male colleagues who support women, who gave them platform to show themselves, to introduce themselves, and also for all the female mentors, because I'm also in a training program at the moment to be well prepared for the professorship role. And I also have a mentor who's a very nice lady and she's actually mom of 5. So, I mean, that is really interesting that how well she can handle the personal life with 5 kids plus the professional work. And I hope that one day I'm going to be a good role model for the next generation. Thank you so much for the time that you gave to me.
Thank you so much for your testimony, Melika. I'm now going to start asking the audience as any questions. And while you get typing your question, I'll open the floor, in particular for Melika and Pinaki, because we've heard a little bit of Gwen on the question I'm going to ask, but Gwen or others, if you want to come in, please. How do you think you've benefited at any point from mentoring or supportive colleagues, if not formal mentoring? And in my question, I've said benefited, but it might have actually been also been a negative support. That's always benefiting. So yeah, how have you seen support and in particular, if possible, mentoring playing a role in where you've come so far in your career? Whoever would want to start answering that question.
So maybe me, because as I said that I am in the process now. So if I understood you correctly, your question is that if I find it helpful and useful to have a mentor, is it your question? Okay, so that's great. So yes, totally. So in my opinion, I have found it very useful because of some reasons. First of all, I think that, for example, for me as a person who's willing and want to stay in academia, so knowing the environment is really important. But when you don't have a mentor, you have no idea how is the, behind the scene. And I think that having a mentor in that respect is very useful. So because, for example, if you want to be prepared for just, let's say, the professorship interview, so the mentor could be a good help, because probably your mentor have been in many appointment procedures, so they know how the system goes. So I mean that from that perspective, it's very helpful. The other thing is that, well, they're humans, and sometimes, because especially for me, so a couple of years ago, I had my daughter. So I mean, as a new mom with, loads of things to do for my kid plus my job. So I was in a very, I would say, confusing situation that how I can handle, how can I do, the time management, task management, and so on. And having a mentor, especially in your gender, and seeing the challenges and difficulties that they have been through, is also going to be very helpful. And then, as I said, that they are their role models. So then you can say that, oh yeah, so they've been in this situation before, but still you can say that they are very successful in their career, and why not you? I mean, from that point of view, I think it's really good to have a mentor.
I would agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I think mentors have played a huge part in, in my career. And I would say even mentors, unofficially mentors, people with whom your work colleagues, one should definitely try to seek out mentors and mentoring kind of relationships, even if they are not officially your mentor, because they can provide, like Melika said, they're humans, so they can provide the human aspect. Because in the absence of mentors, what else do you have? Your own opinions about how the field looks like, which is kind of always very dangerous. If you just go out on a limb and think this is how the world works, could be naive, could be even wrong. Or alternative, the other alternative sometimes is the universities or other institutions provide you some kind of seminars every now and then, or workshops usually it's kind of hard to get the daily working kind of picture of the environment from those kind of workshops. It's good to get some idea, and let's say how one can become an academic, but going to a workshop doesn't really help that much, to understand the nitty-gritties. And I think that's where a role model can really bring it to life, and tailor, let's say, especially if they're in your field, right? Or are in your same gender or have similar kind of life circumstances, then that definitely helps a lot.
Anyone wants to add to that, the role of mentoring?
I think I'll just add, funnily enough, I was talking to a colleague about this yesterday, that I think a lot of my mentoring was informal, like Pinaki said, and I think I have to say that's really a credit to the ESB. The ESB is a really nice network of really friendly, helpful people, and that's one reason why as a society I kind of stuck with out of all of them. So I had a lot of informal mentors through the ESB network, but I think I benefited a lot from having a lucky start that I had a supervisor who himself was well connected and well known in the field, which was just luck. I didn't even understand what I was looking for at that time. So some people have the good luck to have one of these supervisors and some people don't. And it's people that don't that can really have a huge setback and find it much harder to progress through no fault. Just they could be equally have equally promising careers, but they just didn't start well with the wrong kind of supervisor and the wrong, not the options. So that's where formal mentoring comes in, I think. So I think some people think, oh, well, formal mentoring is not necessary if you have a good network and you have you can just ask people informally. But formal mentoring is needed for the people who don't have that access and aren't sort of in the right clique. And that's, going back to what Melika said about true diversity, it's the people that get left out because they're not kind of behaving like the other people and they're not in the clique that we really need to target now, I think, because that's where we're missing out on, potentially great colleagues that are have not had that fair access.
Yeah, I think it's a good point to sort of equate mentoring and networking and that access to networking, because I think that at the end of the day, a lot of opportunities occurs in all type of jobs through networking. You need to be in the appropriate network when necessary to be able to progress. Does anyone in the audience wants to come up either on that topic or with other questions on the chat?
Maybe in the meantime, I'm happy to also contribute or just to ask a little question. I personally also am a big fan of mentoring, but besides that, I'm just curious to hear what Melika and also Gwen and Pinaki think. Is there a particular stage in your career where you would benefit most? And do you need mentoring of people that are always higher up, or could it also be from the same level? I don't know. I'm looking forward to your thoughts about that.
Should I go?
May I start? Oh, yeah, sure.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
No, please, you go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think a very difficult stage, as everyone knows, if you're doing the academic track, so industry might be slightly different, is the postdoc stage, where you have very short-term contracts, you're moving around a lot, so you might have lost some of your network and mentors, and it's a big concern. Will I get a job in academia, or should I move to industry? And I suppose it's similar in industry. The first couple of steps are probably quite also short-term and junior, and you haven't yet got that very established place in that industry. So I think it's that early career, because for PhD, I mean, it's difficult when you're a PhD student and trying to decide what to do, but there is a lot available within the universities for PhD students, whereas postdocs are often missed out of a lot of the the available support. So for me, that was a really critical time.
Thank you for pointing this out, because I just wanted to say so, because I'm now a senior postdoc, so have been working as a postdoc for 5 years. So as I said, I think that's a very critical time, that I think that in academia, I think that's exactly where we need to know excuse me. So I think that's exactly the point, that we need to know if we want to stay in academia or industry. And I think having a good mentor, not necessarily someone from the upper level, even your colleagues at your same level, could help you a lot to basically define your way if you really want to stay in academia or if you want to go to industry. So for me, I think that's very important, because I also have my mentoring at this time, and it has been so helpful. So I think that's the most, I think, critical or maybe sensitive time of being in academia before getting established.
I cannot speak about the industry, because that was like billions of years ago. I was working in a company, but in academia, I feel that mentorship was probably, and for me, it has been most helpful when answer our earliest question, when I have received advice or know-how from people close to my career stage, because that's something I can I feel I could use more. Of course, it's great to listen to somebody far ahead in the journey. But again, given the fickle nature of especially postdoc careers, where you don't know whether you would be actually doing this thing in 5 years' time, or will have the correct, that the world will align in the way that that you will end up in this track. At the time, it's kind of hard to then make use of advice which is very far ahead in track. I mean, without diversity, even without that, academia, I feel, is a very, very difficult, complex environment to navigate. So, of course, with other aspects of diversity, it becomes even more challenging. And then, if you so if you get blue skies kind of advice, I guess it's kind of hard to then use it in your daily life. That will be my feeling. But of course, it's good to be motivated. It's good for a motivational thing, though. I mean, if you're feeling down and you feel somebody who has done it, like, somebody who has, like Melika said, people who have been successful, in balancing family life and academic careers and being very successful in that. If you can see that early on, maybe you start thinking about it all as well. I mean, even if you can't use it, you know that these are the things that are going to happen in your life later on. So it's useful once in a while. That's what I'm not sure if I answered really all this question.
If I may, I would like to add something else as well. I think it's important to bear in mind that also luck plays a role, because when you are a postdoc, so you are in a department under the head of someone, and so it is your luck if that someone is supportive, if that someone puts you in the right track to basically achieve your goal, or maybe that person is just thinking about himself or herself, and you are well, basically left alone. So I mean, that is also very important, because I think if someone in the audience has this situation that, oh yeah, so I've been doing postdoc for 2 or 3 years, I'm still confused what to do. So you should also take this into account. And I think well, apart from everything that we've talked so far, mentorship and these things, I think the self-led learning is also very important. So I think if you look at your society, for example, ESB, so there are many programs that you can go and be active there and just learn something from those platforms as well. And this was the only thing that I wanted to add, so that luck is always there, so we can't do anything with that.
Yes, it's a big player. It's all level thing. I still don't have questions or comments in the chat by the audience.
There's one from Nina. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Or okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So there was indeed a question not directly related to mentoring, on whether the ESB as a society is planning to implement a feedback system on accessibility, for instance, or on diversity. and or I've answered in writing, but I can tell my answer. We've not thought of that formally yet, saying that this year we had put together a survey with a series of questions, and if I recall well, some open-ended option in that survey. And I think it's a good point that having a feedback mechanism, or at least a clear mechanism for suggestions is important. And so this is something that we could implement on a systematic basis after Congress. And I understand the need for anonymity somehow with that type of survey, but at the same time also don't ever hesitate to just get in touch with us either through email or catching us at the Congress and having a chat. I think I'm going to talk for all of us, but I think we're all relatively open to suggestions and quite open to think about what we're doing and why we're doing things in a particular way. So yeah, hopefully that answered that direct question. So I don't know already if you want to add anything on that. We have covered the goods, yeah, or the sort of what we're doing currently in the society. So another aspect of that for discussion, which is I think always a bit a question when we talk about diversity, and so for instance, Gwen, you've mentioned parity in the council. I think Melika, you've also mentioned quantitative aspect of diversity. As a society, we currently have 35% of women, a bit more than that if we look at the student body only. How do we feel in us looking at parity in terms of purely not even gender, but in terms of even sex, parity of sex in instances in governing bodies, I would say, when it's not actually representative of the making of the society? I don't know if anyone has any strong feeling about that.
Marlene, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, so we've mentioned quantitative aspect of diversity or parity on the council, for instance, 50-50 women or 50-50 gender in chairing different or in different key roles within the Congress. However, we don't have 50% women in the society. So I was wondering how people feel about that, meeting targets of numbers that are not necessarily representative.
Should I go? Because I've been working at the university level in EDI issues for a few years, where this would be a big question very regularly, especially when talking about our student body. Should it, when we look at problems, and then people would say, yes, but if you look at the local population, we don't have that much diversity in the local population, so what you wouldn't expect more in the students, and it's always a bit of an issue of, do you have the leadership representing the sort of status quo, or do you try and make the leadership a better proportion, maybe more global, and be sort of more of a role model or aspirational kind of thing for people to look at? And it is a complicated issue, because to have, for example, to have the council 50-50 when the membership's only 30%, you're actually actively recruiting women above their proportion, which then some people call positive discrimination or whatever. And yeah, I don't have an answer, I'm afraid, but I can see where the issues come from. But I think certainly having a little bit better representation at the leadership level does hopefully help with that pipeline issue. So if one of your things you want to change is the pipeline and you want to encourage more women members, you have to start at the top, I would say. But you have to also look at the other end. Why are there only 35% women members? And that's related to the problems of women in engineering in general and so on. So you have to kind of tackle at both ends. But I'm not, yeah, I think just saying, oh, well, that's fine because that's what the proportion is everywhere else is a bit of a cop-out.
Yeah, if I may also add to this, because I've also been involved in many other, like when I think D&I initiatives also at the university. I think this is indeed a very difficult question. Because I mean, I like the idea or the suggestion of Gwen to be like, okay, maybe it's too easy to say that it should be proportional to, let's say, the composition of the current field. Maybe indeed it needs to be inspiring and it needs to, you know, project forward. I like that. On the other hand, I think we're often overburdening minorities because they need to be represented in all of these kind of committees, not only D&I committees, but then also hiring committees and all kinds of things, which on the one hand is nice, but on the other hand, just also overburdens the group, which is actually already overburdened. And I think also it kind of, in this way, we also seem to be putting the problem, let's say, or the solution, let's say, to the problem in their hands, which I think is also not very fair. You know, it's not because there's an underrepresentation, for example, of women in engineering or of other minorities that they should solve that problem. I think that's way too easy. And again, because they are already overburdened. And so I think by doing that, you also continue that. You make it very easy actually for the others not to do anything about the problem. So ideally, I think that we should also move towards a state where everybody has this topic on their minds. And I think also men are very equipped to think about this topic. Like, I don't see why only women can do this. So I think that's something where we can also gain a lot, I think, by training others and making sure that others are, let's say, active bystanders, so that everybody works on this, not only, let's say, the targeted group, whatever that that may be. But again, I don't know how to achieve this, but that would be the dream, right?
Yeah, so I knew in asking the question that it's always a controversial aspect. I also think that actually, while in engineering there might be a low number of women, it's not that low in things that are related to biomedical engineering and biomechanics. And so actually trying to achieve 50% representation throughout and also 50% or more membership should be attainable, because overall, when you look at the fields, just it's quite healthy in terms of its diversity. In the UK, it's very healthy in terms of its racial diversity as well. And when I think it's mentioned earlier, that's something that as a society we can be better at, that we are currently, I think. To leave a few minutes to see if there's anything going up on the chat. But unless I'm missing something, I don't think there is.
If there is still time, I wanted to, maybe I put Alexandra a bit on the spot. I'm very sorry, but I know she'll be fine. But I'm just curious because I think there's also a generation possibly a generational differences, or you're one of the younger researchers, I think, here as well. So regarding, for example, to the mentorship program, do you feel that, let's say, there are hurdles to kind of ask somebody to be your mentor? So do you think it's good that there's such a formal program to which you can apply? Or did you already contact mentors before? Or how do you look at, let's say, this initiative? Because you're the target group, right? So, or part.
Well, what I think is that it helps a little bit especially because it depends a little bit about your university and how many people you can actually interact with, like independently from the mentorship program, because you were mentioning like informal mentoring earlier, and I think that's great. But for example, in my laboratory, in my university, there are not, like, there is basically only my supervisor, who is working in the field that I can talk to. So I think it's very nice that sort of program, especially for for people that have environments which are not so much crowded, let's say. I'm in the mechanical and aerospace engineering building, so I mean, it's still nice, it's still the same issue, but it's not the same field, so it's a bit trickier. But of course, I mean, being involved in the ESB, for example, is also like healthy to interact with a lot of people as well, so this helps. But I feel like this formal mentoring thing is also good for people that maybe do not feel like going towards someone and say, hey, can we have a discussion? This requires a bit of, I'm not sure anyone can do it. So I think it's really necessary to have something a bit more like framed. And yeah, I think it helps because not anyone can have interactions as they want to have, or to have the guts, let's say, to go and say, hey, can you help me? So I think it's good, yeah. And also, yeah, just to finish, I think it also helps to realize, for some people maybe that don't realize that it might be necessary, having this formal framework is like, oh, hey, that's true, it could help me, and it just like maybe comes to your mind where you would maybe not do it like originally from yourself. You see what I mean? I hope so.
Yeah, I would.
Just wanted to say that it's good to have a formal thing, because being a mentor also is a journey, and you can learn from other mentors and other mentor-mentee relationships that you know of. And if there is a forum, official one, then you can chat with other people how have their experiences been, and that way you could also become a better mentor even. So that's what I want to add to what Alex said.
Yeah, and so also interestingly, while indeed the idea behind the mentoring program was targeting mostly young researchers, we've actually had a few requests for people that they've just started as assistant or associate prof to find a mentor to help them navigate that new role. It was a bit difficult to do that pairing for them because of the numbers we had, and so what I've done initially is actually pair those people together so that they do some peer mentoring aspect on that journey. But then hopefully we can as we progress and manage to have more available mentors, we can then set up different type of relationship from student to all the way to professors. I think that mentoring is useful at any stage when you start on a new role, or when you're looking into moving into a new role, whatever your stage of your career. Some mentoring and yes, type of advice and guidance you're looking for is very different, but I think that mentoring is always useful with a formal on that. Well, I think that on that note, and given there's still no questions from the audience, I'll end up the webinar right now. I want to thank again Gwen, Pinaki, and Melika for contributing. Thank you again to Alex, Chiara for the organization. Thanks already for contributing into the questions here as well this morning. Hopefully this has been useful, and I'll see you all or most of you in Maastricht, where there is a lunch set up for women in biomechanics sessions that I'm still on the process of organizing. So more info will be on that later this month. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day wherever you are. Hope it's sunnier than here. Indeed, where it's all dark and cloudy. Have a good day. Thank you.
The same weather.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
Thank you, everyone. Lovely
Bye.
to see you. Bye.
Bye.